Hello, I'm Sister Rose Pacatte, the founding director of the Pauline Center for Media Studies in Los Angeles. I'm also a film critic and a media literacy education specialist. And it is my great honor to be an associate producer on this wonderful film, Francesco. Let's take a look.
This is a man who's opened his heart to the hearts of all of humanity. This is a man who cries with humanity, who laughs with humanity, who suffers with humanity. This is Pope Francis.
La humanidad vive una crisis.
I'm convinced that we can make a difference. I'm sure. Pedimos perdón por los abusos sexuales por parte de miembros cualificados de la Iglesia.
We sat across from each other, and he said, Juan Carlos, the first thing I want to tell you is that I apologize for the pain that the church has caused you. I never thought I'd see that day.
Ser la voz, pero no de una manera programática, me sale solo. Y también por mi sangre migrante.
I was in the cells of the detention facility with children all around me. The Border Patrol that were watching us said, thank you, sister, for helping us see that they're human beings. To be a symbol of a presence of caring for humanity, to defend life, how our role can make a difference.
Yo quiero agradecer en su persona a todas las religiosas de los Estados Unidos. Las felicito.
I think God made him experience what people experience.
I am also very honored to introduce our speakers today in this conversation that we're having about universal fraternity and interfaith dialogue. First of all, I would like to introduce our director of Francesco and producer, Evgeny Afineevsky, then Professor Omar Abboud of the Argentine Islamic Center. He is also the co-president of the Argentine Institute for Interreligious Dialogue and a member of the Royal Islamic Institute of Jordan. And then finally, it is my pleasure to introduce Brother Michael Perry. He is a Franciscan and the Minister General and Coordinator of the Friars Minor around the world. Welcome everyone to our conversation today, and thank you for being with us. I'd like to lead off with a question that just came up. It's not on your list, so it's kind of a surprise. So I'm going to lead off with this question that comes from the writings of the theologian Hans Kung, the Swiss theologian who just died 2 days ago. And he was working on a universal ethic from all religions and people all over the world of common values that can bring us together. And he said, we will not have world peace until we have peace between religions. And I'm wondering if each one of you in turn might be able to address him saying that and how it links up with Pope Francis's idea of encounter and building bridges. How about you, Evgeny, to start with?
I think for Pope Francis, we can witness an amazing actions. And I think going by the latest action that he conducted, going to Iraq in the middle of pandemic, where he tried to comfort so many people who are in a war-torn country in these days, meeting so many leaders of different religious groups, trying to sit with them together. I think that's evidencing his ability to try to be ambassador of peace for these type of the situations. I think same reflection we can see in terms of him going to Central African Republic in a earlier of his papacy. And same we can also say about his ability to go as ambassador of peace to Middle East and trying to kind of connect leaders of Palestine and Israel. I think what he's trying to do, he's truly trying to advocate for peace. He's trying to make people to sit together and talk about opportunity of coexistence, interfaith dialogue, universal fraternity. I think that's what I see in every action that Francis is doing.
And how do you think that Judaism can contribute to this conversation that the Pope or the actions of the Holy Father?
I think each of us need to be open to see beyond religious aspects. I, as a Jewish boy, found fascinating inspiration in the Pope Francis, not just a leader of the Catholic Church, not somebody who is basically head of the oldest religious institution, but as a human being, as we already discussed this, as the brother to humanity, as the father to entire humanity. So I guess when we will start to look over the religious aspect and we'll start to see everyone as a brother, as somebody who is equal to us, we will be able to overlook these things, specifically religious things.
Yes. And Professor Omar, what do you say? What can Islam bring to this, to the idea of peace and building bridges?
First, I live here in Argentina. We are Muslim in Argentina, I am a minority. We have a big coexistence with all religion. And I need to refer to the time when Jorge Mario Bergoglio, today Pope Francis, was Archbishop here in Buenos Aires. He began with this. Is what needed in a country like Argentina, interreligious dialogue? Really no. We are immigrating, we have another kind of problem, but not the problem between religions. And why this? Our institute is willed in his inspiration, because Bergoglio in this time speak about preventive dialogue in 2000. Remember, we are talking about preventive war. And he began to speak about preventive dialogue. And why? I think that there is an after and before of Francisco in the time of interreligious dialogue. Why? Because today, in the modern world, nobody discusses the situation of a sheikh, an imam, and rabbin, and priest sit together. And he's saying now, pass to the action. In 20 years ago, this was symbolic, a table with people of all religion. Today is indispensable. And also, you must think in Francisco's thinking about how was the relation between Catholic and Muslims before him, especially in time of Ratisbona, and how is the relation now? It's absolutely different. And don't say nothing. Ratisbona was a little mistake in a population of Muslims very sensible, in this time very sensible. I remember Benedicto say something, and it was not grave, was only a phrase, but the relations become strong between Egypt, University of Azhar Sharif, and the other Muslims of the world. And Francisco, with Fratelli Tutti, with the document of fraternity in 800 years between the encounter between Malik and Camille and Francisco in Abu Dhabi, sank, I think, in my vision, the more important document in the last years in the world. And maybe later we can talk about this.
Brother Michael, as a Franciscan, as a Catholic, and as representing the saint that Pope Francis took as for his name, as a model for his papacy, what can you as a Catholic, as a Christian, say about this idea of building bridges, of coming together that Pope Francis talks about so much? in the film, of course, but in Fratelli Tutti and his other documents?
Well, first and foremost, I think Pope Francis reminds us that the human person is at the center of, this is who God thinks of when God wakes up and goes to sleep, if we can say that. God thinks of loving and bringing people each day, presenting them with the possibilities of being able to have the necessary conditions for a dignified life. And so one of the elements of peace, obviously, is justice. Justice is central to the conditions for being able to live a dignified human life, are essential for being able to experience peace. But we also must remember peace is a gift of God. It's something we receive in our heart as an expression, an extension of ourselves when we reach out to others, when we go beyond the walls and the boundaries and our tribal zones that we create sometimes through religion, through society, and some other economy. When we are able to break out of those bonds or those binding chains of our tribalism in whatever form it takes, and reach across and be able to experience, to be able to encounter someone who is not me, but who is God in God's form, in human form, the presence of God. And so I think this call for us, and this is something which St. Francis experienced progressively in the journey of his own life. He came to recognize the deep dignity of others and the presence of God and extend it to all of creation, our common home. The way that Pope Francis dignifies human beings allows them to recover a sense of being loved, of being worthy, of being alive, and then having the responsibility to share that with other people. This, I think, is at the heart of this message of peace and going beyond boundaries, crossing lines, if you will, this and whatever inter means, but the interreligious encounters being one dimension of it.
Thank you. Evgeny, I'd like to backtrack a little bit here. And, you know, you've been continually asked two questions about this film or about your work here. And you are Jewish, and after two documentaries, one about the uprising in Ukraine and Syria, why do you want to make this movie? Why did you want to make this movie about Pope Francis? And as a follow-up, how did you reach out to our distinguished panelists to ask them to be in your film, but then to be present here today?
Being on Maidan during the filming of Winter on Fire, I, for the first time in my life, witnessed interfaith dialogue. And not only that, I witnessed that it's working. Something that, as the Jewish boy who'd been raised in Jerusalem, I never saw in my life. In these days, and Professor Abboud witnessed this, in these days when Palestinians and Israelis fighting for different reasons between themselves, I witnessed on Maidan where almost every representative of every church being with the people, praying next to each other. Like previously, Professor Abboud said, it's sometimes unusual to have leaders of different religious groups sitting together. And here I witnessed them praying together, one after another. Rabbi, Islamic sheikh, head of the Greek Orthodox Church, representative of the Catholic Church, they were praying for the spirit of the people of Maidan. And it was not just for the believers, it was something for believers and non-believers, for every human being who was there on a square. I think that remarkable experience was staying with me after I finished Winter on Fire and after I moved to Christ from Syria. I think this experience of true interfaith dialogue, true coexistence, true fraternity stayed with me and brought me in some shape to Pope Francis, who was, since his days in actually Argentina, he was promoting this. And taking a step further, Mar Abboud was the first person whom I actually interviewed when I came to Argentina in his office. So that's how the journey started. And going directly from Vatican, stepping directly into Argentina and starting my journey with him. And later, a few months later, I had an honor to interview Brother Michael, whom I was interviewing in a Franciscan headquarters in the Franciscan Curia. So that was my journey. But this journey, like I said, started through my 2 movies that I was growing in my spirit. I was growing in my spirituality. I was witnessing things. Same like in Syria. Syria was the cradle of civilization before the war. It was over 17 different religious groups living in peace before all it started there. Same like in Iraq. I think Pope Francis being in Iraq, I don't remember the place, but he was specifically somewhere where on this square was the ruins of 3 different religious beliefs. The ruins of, I think, Armenian church and 2 others. In one square, one in front of each other. It's just symbolizing that the coexistence exist before, and we as humans destroyed it. We as the humans started to use different premises to put people through the religious differences one against another. And I think that's what brought to a lot of war conflicts. That's what brought to a lot of problems that we are facing together right now. And I think only becoming again one big family, overcoming the religious differences, starting to look at each other as brothers, as the people who are equal to each other, no matter how we call our believers or our gods. Some people will call it Allah, some people will call it Avraham Avinu, some people will call it Jesus Christ. So we can call it differently. And some non-believers will call it providence, universe, but we all children of God, and we all need to overcome these differences in naming the same person from whom we are on this world. I think that's what we need to learn. And I guess that's what brought me to Pope Francis. That's what brought me to make this movie, to show to the world all the disasters that we as humans created, and to show how he, as the role model and leader, as somebody who is representing the humanity in these days, trying to unite us, because this world needed change. Because we can't continue doing the disasters that we had before. We only can go into the safe future for this planet and for us if we will overcome all our issues and all our disasters, and we'll start to do things differently. So that's, I guess, was the premises why I went to do this movie. And in the same time, I'm so thankful for this distinguished guest who met me on my journey to create this amazing cultural monument dedicated to Francis and his mission on this world, and becoming a part not only of the movie, but also of this fascinating dialogue that we are continuing after the movie to spread the word of interfaith fraternity.
Well, I'm going to thank you very much, Evgeny. I'm going to throw in a question here that was not asked, but on your, ahead of time. But here I'm a woman. I'm on this panel. I'm moderating it. But it's traditionally in the 3 monotheistic religions in the world, they're led by men, right? And Pope Francis in the movie, he brings in women, and Evgeny, you bring in women because you're the director, you choose, and the producer, so you choose the shots, you choose who you interview. But what is the role of women in our various religions represented here in carrying out the program or of the agenda of Pope Francis, if you will, that he outlines in Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti and his other documents? Because I always wonder, like, where are the women? And as a good friend of ours once said, of all of ours once said, that if women aren't part of the solution, there will never be a solution.
All my family is Muslim. My grandfather came from Syria, and the other grandfather came from Lebanon, and the father of my father from Iraq. Okay, and I saw my house. I saw the role of the women in my house was different. Really was a different role between the woman and the man. But I must recognize that Muslims in the world must grow in this, must learn in this. And we don't need exactly a reinterpretation of another interpretation of the text. We have another look over the text, okay? Because which is our problem? The problem is the literally. When one text is written literally, maybe the interpretation is not so good. Okay, in particular in the case of Pope Francis, I hear many times when he was Archbishop defend the rights of the woman and promote encounter of woman in interreligious subject. Why? ¿No es cierto? Because any society who have not equality between women and men maybe don't use the all own capacity. Okay, and and Max said an exception in this. This is one thing is equality of women, or equality woman inside the region. Another thing completely different is gender ideology. Okay, I need to make the distinction in these things. And we, as I say, in religion we must grow, and maybe not sure, particularly in Islam. Okay, but I want to say something also. In fact, Evgeny say something. There is a difference, a distinction between spiritual authority and temporal power. Okay, and I think that Pope Francis at this time, I'm saying this is my vision like a Muslim, is the spiritual authority of the world. Why? Because he is putting limits to political authority. When you read Fratelli Tutti, especially chapter number 5, you see another vision, and you see that another world is possible, another political world is possible, another vision about people, about populism, about democracy, about justice. Because we cannot speak about peace if there is no justice, there is no job, there is no education. And Pope Francis, I see in my vision also, Pope Francis is putting some steps. First, when he began to speak, he speak about ecology, our relation with the air. After, he speak about the brotherhood in the humanity. And the last year, the problem was the pandemic, the COVID. He speak about economy. Remember this, the encounter of economy of Pope Francis will be revolutionary for the world. It's another point of view, because in my vision, in the world at this time, there is no present a Cold War, but there is another division. And this is a war of fundamentalism. And the opposition of fundamentalism is dialogue. In Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis don't speak only about interreligious dialogue. He speaks about social dialogue. And it's different, and that's different. And I can present you an example. When we was in Jerusalem, in the travel to Holy Land, this is the first time that I will speak about this. When we go there, when we arrived to Jordan, there is programmed an encounter between Palestine Authority, Israeli Authority, and also the Pope. And the problem was the place. There is a brother of Father Michael talking about and trying to solve the situation, a great person, a wisdom man who is Brother Pizzaballa in this situation. But in one place, another place don't want to pay the political cost. And what do the Pope? Come to my house to praise. He solved with this, come to my house to praise. He was in the square of Belen. He invited a bus, and after, when we arrived to Ben Gurion, he invited Shimon Peres. And 1 month later, they was together in Vatican. This is interreligious dialogue. It's not a symbol, it's an action. And social dialogue is another action. If religion can live in peace, the world can be also live in peace. Because we say as religions, we believe in one thing, but this belief is from your mouth, from inside. Dialogue is about values, not about theology. Okay? If religion can't, politics also can't. But maybe in some time they have not the volunteer.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. And Brother Michael, what would you say about the role of women in coming to solutions in our world today? From a Catholic Christian perspective, yes, thank you.
I would say that while the church might appear to be led by men, it is driven by women. And I'm not trying to be politically correct. I think it's an analysis of the truth. I lived for many years in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then I worked for a number of years in processes of peace and reconciliation in Sudan, in Burundi, in Rwanda, in other parts of Africa. And the one thing that I saw clearly in the case on the ground, and this is where I think interreligious dialogue is very personal, and it's also very local in one sense. I think the peace processes and the reconciliation processes in South Africa, while Bishop Tutu played a central role, at the local level, it was the women who helped bring women and men together, to help bring the children together, and to be able to create a safe space where people could talk about pain, talk about loss, talk about not seeing their children, not being able to bury those who have been killed by security forces in South Africa. And the same was true in Rwanda, in Burundi, in South Sudan after the war and the separation of the countries. The one place where we saw a tremendous energy and actually getting things done was where women were able to create safe havens for dialogue, for honest dialogue, and for encounter. And I'm not saying that they solved the problems, but what they did was they laid foundation stones, the women themselves, working with men, obviously, working with boys and girls, working with religious leaders. But I think the women in Africa, in a number of countries that experienced tremendous human plight of suffering in following genocide and following other forms of violence, unlimited violence, I think this is one place where the women continue and set a model for how we might move forward in the future. This is the big thing about Pope Francis. If we go and honestly listen to how change takes place, we will validate the role of women as central to all that we call encounter, dialogue, and prospects for a future.
Thank you, brother. And Evgeny, what would you say?
You know, first of all, I'm going back to Professor Abboud. When I started my journey in Buenos Aires, I met a lady whom Pope Francis put in a quite big position. She is basically director of the channel. I'm talking about Silvia Tozzi, who is the head of the Orbit 21, the channel that was created by Jorge Maria Bergoglio while he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires. And that's a great example of him being even Archbishop, creating a channel and putting a woman to lead this channel. And that's a prime example. And I guess the rest we can see in a movie. I highly suggest to the people to go and watch it in the movie, because in a movie we see these people who witnessed and testifying on a whole endorsement of women empowerment by Pope Francis, and he himself endorsing women and emphasizing their importance to our society and to the church same time. So I think the movie is the great testament to any of his actions.
Okay, so, but what about Judaism itself? Do you think that does Judaism have a journey to go with the way women are integrated?
Judaism, Sister Rose, Judaism do have males and also female rabbis. I personally know here in Los Angeles female rabbis. So Judaism is quite progressive in that case, because we do have female rabbis.
Okay, very good. So as I think it's about, we're going to be wrapping up our time now, but I would like to ask Omar and Brother Michael, especially, what did it mean to you to be part of this film?
It's an honor. I'm nobody. I'm just a person here in Buenos Aires who worked in interreligious dialogue 30 years ago, and interreligious dialogue is my second religion. Okay, I have another vision at this time now, but I feel this question, like when somebody asked to me, what do you feel in the moment of the hug in the Kotel, in Israel? And it's very difficult. I was, I don't know how to say in English. I was a testigo. I was seeing. I'm in the party. We are here. I'm very, very, very happy, and I say thanks God to live these times with Pope Francis, and I'm so glad to assist to the party of the Pope. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Brother Michael, what about you?
Well, I don't know if Evgeny knew this, but I was a bit hesitant at the beginning, and you had to try to explain to me, and you weren't trying to convince me. I don't think. I think you were just sharing with me your journey, and I think that because of that, because I found someone, and it wasn't a question of someone who was Jewish, it wasn't a question of someone who was a film producer, it was another human being who was pursuing an honest search, a journey for some future that we have yet to where a point to where we might arrive. And so I think I found myself intrigued and drawn into this journey. And I think that this became for me, and it's the same thing that happened the night when Jorge Bergoglio was elected Pope, and I was sitting alone in my office watching it on computer. And I said, he must be talking about the Jesuit Franciscan, Francis Xavier. And then when I found out he wasn't, I was speechless. And then I was petrified, because I thought, here's someone now who's going to oblige me and all of us who pretend to be Franciscan, to have the name, was going to oblige us to undertake perhaps a very different type of journey. And what I find with the film, and what I find now, even in this dialogue today, with Professor Abboud, with Evgeny, with Rose, and I hope with those who are listening, a new stage of this dialogue, of this journey. So I want to thank each of you for allowing me to journey with you. Evgeny, thank you for allowing me to experience, to journey with you and to become part of the journey of Francesco. Thank you.
And I would love to add, first of all, I would love to thank everybody. And I would love to add that through the gestures of Francesco, of Pope Francis, through the amazing examples that Abboud bringing to the screen and his story, through the fascinating journey that Father Michael bringing to the screen, I think we can teach and educate the younger generation. And we're not talking about just believers, we're talking also non-believers, because the prime example that Professor Abboud shared with me when I was interviewing him in Argentina, and we presenting in a movie, this historic hug between him, between Rabbi Skorka, and between Pope Francis is not just something symbolic. It's a lesson that we can learn. It's example to the next generation that growing in Israel and Palestine, that yes, we can all coexist. It's something that for me is a great teaching moment. And I think through the expressions, this dialogue that we continue in story, we can educate younger generation. And again, how you started this panel today, talking about peace between different religions, that peace only can bring peace. So I guess that's what we're trying to do. And through the journey of Father Michael, who talking about examples of St. Francis of Assisi, we had an interesting conversation when he was explaining to me about the whole journey of St. Francis of Assisi. And then I found fascinating how this journey is completely reminding me the journey of Jorge Maria Bergoglio from his childhood. So it's a fascinating lessons, and it's amazing examples that we can all together, united, and as the brothers, bring to people, to this bigger world, and teach them to do better things towards all of us, to live in peace, to respect religious beliefs, to be a believer or not believer, but still feel that we're all brothers. And I think their ability to be a part of this journey, their ability to share their personal views and their personal lessons allowing the world to learn more about fraternity, or about specifically the last encyclicals that Pope Francis signed, or his motivation to bring us to the 21st century as brothers united together. And I think that's what these people helping me. And I think I'm really thankful for them to being a part of this journey that hopefully can bring the fruits of prosperity, peace, love, humanity back to this world.
Thank you so much, Evgeny, and thank you, Professor Omar and Brother Michael, for your time today. And we thank Discovery for bringing us together to talk about things that really matter. May God bless you all.